lot smaller than I thought it would be.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jeff Hunt. I'm the director of the Texas Military Forces Museum, also commander of our Living History Detachment. I'd like to welcome you to the star attraction of our Living History Weekend, our World War II battle reenactment. This is something we do every April to help us remember all of the men and women who have served in the Texas Military Forces during their long and storied history. And we're going to do that today by putting a focus on a particularly bright moment in the story of the Texas Military Forces, and that is the Battle of Monte Lamar at the end of August of 1944. 36th Infantry Division was created in July of 1917, shortly after the United States entered the First World War. It was initially constructed by merging the National Guard forces of Texas and Oklahoma together into a single division. Hence the symbolism of our shoulder patch, blue arrowhead representing Oklahoma, which before statehood was known as the Indian Territory, with a T for Texas superimposed on top of it. 36th Division saw 24 days of combat on the Western Front in October of 1918. After World War I, it was returned to the United States and demobilized, and at that point it became an all-Texas National Guard outfit. It was still an all-Texas National Guard outfit in November of 1940 when President Franklin Delano Roosevelt declared a state of national emergency after the German conquest of Western Europe and mobilized the National Guard. 36th Division would train at Camp Bowie outside of Brownwood, Texas. Then it would go on the Louisiana maneuvers. It would go to Camp Blanding in Florida, participate in the Carolina maneuvers, and move to Camp Edwards in Massachusetts and actually do amphibious training on Martha's Vineyards in 1943. March of that year, it was sent to North Africa, which was where the fighting was just coming to a conclusion, so it didn't get into action before the Africa Corps surrendered. But on September 9th of 1943, it spearheaded the invasion of Italy at the Gulf of Salerno, becoming therefore the first American division to set foot on the mainland of Europe. The 36th Division spent a week fighting to secure the beachhead, and then it would fight its way up the bloody boot of Italy, seeing some of the worst combat that American soldiers would experience in World War II at places like San Pietro, the Rapido River. In May of 1944, the 36th would lead the breakout from the Anzio beachhead. It would be the first Allied division to pass through the city of Rome. It would chase the Germans north of Rome until early July, when it was pulled off the line, given refresher amphibious training, and then on August 15th of 1944, it spearheaded the invasion of southern France, the other D-Day, Operation Dragoon. 36 lands in France, and then it races up the Rhone River Valley to try and cut off the retreat of the German 19th Army. And in a place called Monte Lamar, it suffered one of the biggest battles that it would fight in World War II. The Germans were desperate to escape. They brought the 11th Armored Division forward to try and break through the 36. We would cut the road, the Germans would break through us, we would cut the road again, the Germans would break through, we would cut the road again, and all during that time, American and Allied air and artillery were pummeling the roads and the railroads the Germans were using to escape. The Germans did eventually manage to get through our lines. We simply had too few troops to stop them, but almost all of their rolling stock, most of their artillery, almost all of their armor, and tens of thousands of their men were killed, wounded, or captured in that engagement. This is what we're going to recreate for you here this afternoon. Playing an important role in that recreation are the vehicles that you see out here and some of the most ubiquitous vehicles used by American and German forces in World War II. So at the very front of the line there, we have a German Kubelwagen. That is their version of the Jeep. It was designed by Ferdinand Porsche, built by Volkswagen. Kubelwagen actually means bucket car. And if you remember the old things from the 1970s, this is what they are modeled off of. This was a two-wheel drive vehicle, had a good road speed of about 45 miles per hour, and one of the interesting things about it is its undercarriage is completely solid, so if it sinks down in mud or snow, it can push itself along like a sled, which was very useful to German forces fighting in Russia. Behind that is a German tank destroyer, Jagdpanther 38, better known as the Hetzer. This is not a tank. A tank has a revolving turret. Tank destroyer has the gun mounted in the bow. You'll notice that it has sloped armor, only 2.5 inches of armor, but that 60-degree slope helps to deflect rounds fired at range from anti-tank guns. It has a 4-man crew, a top road speed of about 26 miles per hour. Behind that, we have one of the most famous of all American vehicles, that is the Jeep. The Jeep was the workhorse of the United States Army and the United States Marine Corps during World War II. They were only supposed to have a lifespan of 100,000 miles. There are still hundreds of thousands of Jeeps driving around the world that have far exceeded that. This thing has a gasoline engine, a top road speed of about 45 miles per hour. It is a four-wheel drive vehicle. It could be used to transport supplies, men, equipment, even wounded soldiers. It could go anywhere the GI needed it to go. And if it got stuck, notice the grab handles on the side of the body. 4 men can pick this thing up and move it if they have to. Behind the Jeep is the standard main battle tank of the United States Army in World War II. This is an M4A3 Sherman tank. Most Shermans had a 75 or a 76 millimeter gun. This one has a 105 millimeter cannon. That was an innovation of the United States Army in early 1944 because tank-to-tank combat in World War II was actually fairly rare. Tanks more often wound up fighting anti-tank guns, and more frequently infantry armed with anti-tank weapons such as bazookas and Panzerfaust. The 75 or 76 millimeter high explosive shell, which is the type of ammunition you want to use against ground targets, doesn't have a lot of punch. A 105 millimeter shell has a great deal of punch. So they put one of these at the headquarters of every tank company, 3 at the headquarters of every tank battalion, and this would enable them to better support the infantry and deal with enemy anti-tank weapons. The Sherman has 4.5 inches of armor at its thickest point in the front, 3.5 on the side of the turret, 1.5 to 2.5 depending on where you are, other parts of the tank. Notice that this has a lot of straight up and down angles, which meant that enemy tank rounds and anti-tank rounds would penetrate it fairly easily. Sherman tank had a crew of 5 men. You have a driver, sits up here in the left front of the hull. Then you have an assistant driver who sits beside him and mans the bow 30 caliber machine gun. You have 3 men in the turret. One is the gunner, one is the loader, the other is the tank commander. He controls the radio and the 50 caliber machine gun on top. The loader not only loads the gun, but controls the 30 caliber machine gun in the coaxial position beside the main gun. Sherman tank had a top road speed of about 25-26 miles per hour, and it was an incredibly versatile vehicle and mechanically very reliable. Some German tanks were better than American tanks, not all of them, but some of them, but they were also prone to mechanical failure and breakdown, and of course the Germans did not have all the fuel they needed to maneuver the way that they wanted. The Americans had plenty of fuel, they had vehicles that were mechanically utterly reliable, and we could build lots of them. During World War II, Germany built 49,000 armored vehicles of all types. We built 49,000 Shermans, in addition to all the other types of tanks and tank destroyers that we built, and numbers do matter on the battlefield. Of course, one of the problems for tanks is to deal with the enemy infantry who's got the anti-tank gun that could kill this tank. How do you do that? You keep infantry up with your tanks. How does an infantryman who can walk 2.5 miles per hour stay up with a tank that can go 26? You put him in a vehicle. You put him in a Jeep or a half-track. This vehicle over here to my left. The M3 half-track was an armored personnel carrier, all-terrain vehicle. That combination of wheels and track would let it go almost anywhere. It could certainly go anywhere that a tank could go. It's not armored. Not really. It's got 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 inch of armor. Machine gun bullets are going to go right through this. Any kind of anti-tank round is going to brew this vehicle up. But it wasn't supposed to be an assault vehicle. It's there to get the infantry to where it needs to be so they can dismount. We also found out that it's a very versatile platform. You could put anti-tank guns and anti-aircraft guns in them. You could use them as ambulances and command posts. And you could also put things like this 81 millimeter mortar into these half-tracks. The 81 millimeter mortar, all of its components weighs almost 200 pounds. Pretty heavy for infantry to carry while they're walking. So you put it in a vehicle. That mortar has an effective range of 3,300 yards, a minimum range of 200 yards. It can fire 8 rounds per minute, and in an emergency, it can double that. Mortars loft their shells high up into the air so that they can fall directly down on targets that are not susceptible to direct fire. So if the enemy's in a trench, he's on the other side of a ridge or a hill, he's in behind a building, the mortar is designed to deal with that. The interesting thing about the half-track, of course, is that it has to point its rear end at the enemy in order to fire that mortar. And then behind that, we have a couple more Jeeps towing anti-tank gun and supporting trailer that has the ammunition and the spare parts for the anti-tank gun. This is a 37 millimeter anti-tank gun. That was the standard on all armies when the war started. By 1943, 1944, you have upgunned that to 75 millimeter anti-tank guns and even larger. But these are some of the vehicles, some of the weapon systems that we'll be demonstrating here today. These are the ones that you would have found on the battlefields of World War II. Now, In a moment, we're going to move this convoy off. We're going to assume our combat positions. And so let me tell you what's going to happen. The Germans are going to be over there. The Americans are going to be back there. At the beginning of this thing, we're going to have a patrol of British and American paratroopers who were dropped inland of the Operation Dragoon invasion beaches, scouting out here in the field in front of you. They're going to run into a German patrol that's going to push them back to your right. That moment, the Germans are going to realize, hey, we found a weak spot in the Allied line, time to make a push. German infantry and the Hetzer are going to start to come out onto this field. At almost that same moment, a convoy of American troops is going to arrive, take position in these foxholes and these shells holes here off to your right, deploy the anti-tank gun, and as we begin to engage the Germans, we're going to bring in the other trump card of the United States Armed Forces in World War II, air power. The combination of artillery, armor, infantry, and air are what allowed the Americans to win World War II, in addition to our ability to mass produce all of this stuff, transport all this stuff across oceans, have the spare parts, the fuel, the ammunition, American industrial might, and American agricultural might, and American fossil fuels were as much of that victory as the valor of the American soldier, airman, Marine, and Coast Guardsman in World War II. We'll have an AT-6 Texans that's going to make 3 passes, going to break up that German attack, drive them off the battlefield. Germans are going to let the airplane clear the area, then they're going to reorganize. They're going to launch another attack aimed at turning our flank. At that point, the Sherman's going to come out, turn the German flank, destroy the Hetzer, and then the Americans will begin a counterattack that will sweep down the field and force the enemy either to surrender or retreat. What we're about to do for you is as realistic as we can possibly make it, with a couple of important exceptions. Although the equipment, the uniforms, the weaponry, almost all of that is actually from World War II, the tactics that we're going to be displaying are those that were used in World War II. We cannot 100% replicate a true battlefield. On a true battlefield, lead and shell fragments would be ripping through the air at flesh-ripping, man-killing velocity. We are firing blank rounds. That means we can be a lot more heroic doing this today than we would be in real life. Nonetheless, at close range, a blank round puts out a plug of compressed air that's as good as a bullet, and it can and will kill you. There are pyrotechnics out on the battlefield. I cannot blank adapt a moving armored vehicle. Make the mistake of getting in the way of any of those things, as that's the real McCoy, and you are dead. So for the duration of this program, it is vitally important that all of you stay exactly where you are. Do not pass these cones. If you have to leave, please leave as close to the bleachers as you possibly can. Okay, when we're done, you'll have a chance to come out and see all this stuff, talk to the troops and everything, but until we give you the word, where you are right now is the only safe place to be. In addition, what we're going to do is very loud. You should have gotten some earplugs. We recommend that you wear them. If you are not equipped with earplugs, put your fingers in your ears, open your mouth a little bit to equalize the pressure, and you will be just fine. The other thing that's going to be very different is that these weapons, of course, are capable of striking from much greater distances than we have available to us. We're doing this right. We're on 35th Street, the Germans are on 45th Street, and we're shooting at each other. We would also all be undercover, because you don't want to be seen on a battlefield. If you can be seen, you can be shot at and killed. And it's not that open field combat didn't happen, you just avoided. And there are lots of woods around me. I would rather be in those woods than out in the open. But if we were at 35th and 45th Street and staying in the woods, you wouldn't see anything. And that would make for a long and boring demonstration. So we're going to come out in the open, we're going to get really close to each other, and we're going to do everything faster than it would really happen in real life so that you can see the vehicles, the weapons, the equipment, the aircraft form the essential tactics that were employed on the battlefields of World War II. And so with that said, we're going to move into our assault positions. This is your chance to get out the phone and get ready to take some really cool video and some really cool pictures. Thank you.
Because they will be.
All right, here we go.
shot out of that shotgun. There's a lot of thundering sound over there.
I thought it was the shooting. Where's the airplane? Where'd the plane go? Where's the plane? Where'd it go? How can you not even see the bomb when it's falling? How can you?
The way they were running,
Somebody just lost an involved.
There's a wounded person there that's being
Oh, we're also
I saw one of the guys take some more trophies.
Just you said they could keep them.
got the dead guys over here.
Yeah, somebody's exit.
So cool, right, Dad?
Without a scratch on their body would never be the same again, because they would never be able to forget what they had seen and heard and smelled and what they had been forced to do. War is not a comic book. It is not a video game. It is not a movie. It does not resolve itself neatly in the span of 2 hours. In war, you can't hit play again and start afresh. Real war is a mean, dirty, ugly, filthy, nasty business. And the men who fought this war did not want to have to fight it. They would have much preferred to have stayed at home with their families and their loved ones, to stay in school, to stick with their job, to build their future. But when one of the greatest evils that mankind has ever created threatened our peace and security, and our nation called, those men and women did not hesitate. They did not evade. They did not run away. They stepped forward, they took the oath, they put on the uniform, and 16 million of them went to war. And 1 million of them never came home. It has always been like that. War, whether it is fought with drones or bayonets, has always had the same central reality. It is death, it is destruction, it is misery, and it is horror. Ennobled by sacrifice and courage and camaraderie. Today is April 19th. 251 years ago this morning, a small band of patriots stood in the path of a British army on Lexington Green and fired the shot heard round the world. And then at Concord and on the road between Concord and Boston, they fought for an entire day to begin the struggle that created our country, that birthed our Declaration of Independence, which promised the idea unique to mankind at the time that all men are created equal, that governments derive their just powers from the consent of the governed. We take that for granted. 251 years ago, it was a radical ideology. We won our independence, we have maintained it. We have helped to spread freedom around the globe. But it has always come at the price. And too often the price has been the horror and the blood of war. And we stand here today on the shoulders of all those who have worn and who wear our uniform, a free people with our liberties and our rights to think what we want, worship as we wish, read and write what we want, vote as how we want. Because there have been men and women willing to fight and to die on our behalf, to give their todays for our futures. That's why we're here. That's why we do this. I have, in my museum career, had the great privilege to meet thousands of veterans and soldiers. And when we talk about them, we use the word hero, and rightly so. And we have heroes of the audience with us here today. I would like any veteran, any time period, peace or war, please raise your hand. Folks, those are your heroes. Give them a round of applause. One of the interesting things about interacting with veterans and troops is that if you use the word hero to their face, to a man and a woman, they will decline the honor. And they will all say, no, I am not a hero. The heroes are my buddies who never came back. The heroes are the ones who still sleep beneath the white crosses and the stars of David in our national cemeteries at home and abroad. And it is to honor their sacrifice and to remember it, and the sacrifice made by their families and loved ones, that we are also here. And so I would like everyone to please rise. Gentlemen, if you would uncover. Company, present arms. Order! Arms! Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, we are extremely grateful that you have given us part of your weekend. We're glad the weather worked out so that it could be nice and pleasant here, so that you can be part of what we do.
Here's some of my favorite photos from the reenactment.